My name is Andrew Whitcamper. I'm an associate professor at Suffolk County Community College in Selden, New York, on Long Island, and I am the costume designer for the Theater Arts Department. Well, I think I don't expect that my story is too different from other stories that are out there, and it may seem an insurmountable obstacle or something you can't overcome when it happens to you. And I wasn't by any stretch the strongest or the bravest person out there. I'm still not. But you know, the reason I wanted to tell this story was just to say that even somebody like me or somebody like you can rise to the occasion and get beyond anything, especially with the help of your support structures, you know, your friends and your teachers or relatives or whoever is there, you know, to be with you at tough times like this. I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's in the northeast portion of the state with my parents and my older brother and sister. It was actually in a community called Monarch Park, and we lived on Countess Drive, which I guess maybe should have been some sort of a clue. A true story. I think I knew I was different at an early age, maybe in my early teens, but in terms of knowing that I was gay, I figured that out and I put words to it in college when I finally accepted and started, you know, feeling that inside. I did not know other gay people in high school, or certainly not before that. But as I went to college, I did start to meet others in that program that I was involved in. I felt fine about being gay. You know, inside I knew that I was a really good person and that I had a lot to offer, and that, you know, I felt, you know, intelligent, and I felt like I was a good member of the community and of my family. So I felt very good about it, but at the same time I knew that there were other people who wouldn't, and that gave me pause, and it gave me a certain amount of apprehension about accepting that and letting other people know that I was gay. In terms of coming out, I guess I might have been what you call a late bloomer. I didn't tell anyone until I got to college, when I started meeting other like people and more diverse people. And the first person I came out to was a female friend of mine. When I first arrived in college, I had discovered that the residence hall I lived in had a diversity education program. And that sounded really interesting to me. And I went and I talked to the advisors of that program, and they sent me to this woman, and I spoke to her for a while and decided that that would be you know, a great opportunity for me to get involved in the college community and perhaps to make a few friends. And so I did that. In the very first meeting, I was absolutely thrilled. You know, I met a bunch of really open-minded, incredibly diverse people. You know, there were other gay people in the room, obviously. There were people of all different colors and religions and so forth, and that seemed like the perfect environment for me. And so very early on in that process, I told my friend that I was gay, and she said to me that she had also had, you know, same-sex relationships, you know, that she was essentially bisexual. And so, you know, that was obviously a very affirming and positive experience for me, you know, having been the first person I came out to. Coming out at the workplace was, you know, it was actually just sort of a no-brainer. It was easy. By the time I got to Suffolk Community College, I was professionally and socially out, and I was going into a community that was very accepting of that, you know, the Theater Arts Department. And so I felt very comfortable. I felt very supported by my colleagues, by the administration, by the students. So it's been a very easy transition, and I was very, very happy about that. With my family, it was a different situation. For whatever reason, I kept it very private for a very long time. In fact, I didn't tell my parents that I was gay until I was 37, which was 4 years ago. And it was based upon an irrational fear that for whatever reason, despite all of my success in life, that they might be disappointed in me for some reason. And you know, in fact, of course, at that time, all of my friends knew, all of my students knew, everybody knew, except I hadn't discussed it with my parents. So there was this sort of awkward situation where when my parents came to visit me in New York, I would have to tell my friends, oh, by the way, my parents don't know, so, you know, ixnay on on the gay thing, at least while they're here. But finally, you know, when I did come out to them, I had just been fed up with this kind of charade, and they were planning to come visit me again in New York, and I was like, this is ridiculous, you know, I'm a grown man. So I called my mom, and of course I reverted to like a 13-year-old boy when I told her this story. I was like, you know, Mom, I just wanted to let you know, you have a gay son, and I hope that you'll be very proud of that. And she's like, you know, Andy, we've known that forever. You know, we knew when you were 16, we knew when you were 20. We've been fine with it for that long, and we hope that you have, you know, find a partner and have a wonderful life, and we're so proud of you. So that was such a revelation. I don't know what else I expected. You know, my parents are wonderful people. But again, like I said, it was an irrational fear that this would somehow work in another way. I was ashamed that I didn't tell them sooner, because I didn't trust them in the way that they had trusted me. You know, my mom said to me when we were having this conversation when I came out, it's like, you know, we knew that you would tell us when you were ready, and in that moment I realized that I had been such a fool and that I should have told them years ago, and you know, we might have had a different or even a better relationship than we already do. But you know, I have a great relationship with my parents. But you know, it just makes me wonder what might have happened. You know, I'm close with my siblings, but again, it wasn't something that I revealed to them first. Both of my brother and sister are both considerably older than me, so they had their own lives and their own circle of friends. But since then, you know, they do know now through my mother. I think she told her 100 closest friends, "Oh, Andy finally came out, thank God." So yeah, so they know, my nieces know, it's everybody knows now. Post a sign, yeah. In this diversity education program, I was very much on the front line, I guess you could say, of any sort of incident that may have happened in the residence halls. You know, I lived on the second floor of a particular hall at my college, and because I was involved in this program, I was responsible for doing some sort of passive education things, essentially putting up billboards and so forth. So, you know, when African American Month came along, I put up information like that, written word, photographs, and so forth. When Hispanic Awareness Month came, similarly. When, you know, LGBT Awareness Month came along, I did the same thing. You know, I was very proud. I did lots of information, big pink triangle, rainbows, and so forth. That's sort of when I discovered that the other men on the floor were not quite as happy about me being gay as I was. There was an immediate uproar, unfortunately, about this particular billboard. There hadn't been before. So I sort of became aware that this wasn't always going to be the experience that I had had when I just arrived in that first meeting of, you know, the diversity program and all those wonderful people. So in short order, overnight, this billboard that I had spent a lot of time, or bulletin board rather, that I had spent a lot of time designing and preparing had been torn down and defaced. My door, actually, I had some things posted on it as well. I woke up the next morning after this had happened and discovered that all of my stuff had been not only partially torn down, but doused in some sort of liquid, which I thought was beer. A couple of days later, one of the other guys on the floor, who was a little more kind, came to me and he said, "Look, you know, that wasn't beer. Some of the guys urinated into a plastic cup and threw it at your door." So I thought, wow, okay, that's that, you know. So it was tough, you know, to be there in those circumstances, especially after this particular incident. Several meetings were called by, you know, the RA and the residence hall coordinator, trying to get everybody together in the group to sort of talk things out and to understand what the big problem was. Well, I knew what the big problem was. These very large personalities on the floor didn't like that I was gay and that I was quote-unquote flaunting it because I had dared to put up a pink triangle. Nothing, of course, was said about the Black Awareness Month work that I did or anything else, you know, up to that point. Unfortunately, this only made things worse, these additional meetings with the RAs and so forth. So I remember being, being actually rather afraid, not, physically afraid, but being afraid of being shouted at or being called faggot or any other sort of derisive term, especially because my room was in the middle of the hallway. So it was almost as though when I walked up the staircase, I had this gauntlet I had to walk through. And so, sometimes I took the elevator just to avoid having, to hear those things, or just the expectation of having to hear those things. Was it the bravest thing I could have done? No, probably not, but it's what I did. It's what I had to do at the moment. To their credit, the college administration, the residence hall administration did as much as they could for me, but ultimately it came down to me sort of dealing with that situation on a personal level and on an individual level, and eventually I got through it, and it got better, and and I went on, and here I am, and what do you say? How I dealt with that sort of abuse or mistreatment was I really reached out to my friends. I spent a lot of time with them, and they were very supportive. It sounds funny, but if I was afraid to walk down the hall, I would call one of them and say, "Come get me," and they were more than happy to do so. I had just recently come out, so it was all very new to me. Also I remember when my parents came to visit, it was because I hadn't, obviously come out to them at that point. It was difficult then too, because they obviously wanted to see my room, and then we had to walk down the hall, and I was still afraid that they would shout something, and they would say to me, "Well, what does that mean?" or "Why are they calling you that?" Of course, they already knew, and they probably would have rose to the occasion and defended me against anybody who had said anything, but I didn't know that at the time. It's funny to 20 some odd years later to reflect on it, yeah, and being in such a different place now than I was then.
Yeah.
Advice I would give to young people learning that they're gay is to be bolder than I was, maybe to be stronger than I was. Don't keep it your private secret. Really invest that knowledge and that trust in the people that you love and care about, your parents, your best friends, and just be satisfied and happy with who you are, and know that you're fantastic. It does get better. It gets better because you yourself make it better. It's sort of the great thing that everyone has to offer this life, is that they can make their world around them a better place. And so that's the charge that we all have, no matter who you are, is to make it better. And so yes, it does get better because of that.